welcome and thanks for being here. I'm joined tonight by a member of the Anderson Center staff, Shri Rudich, who is our residency chef and visitor coordinator, and also by 2024 Early Career Artist in Residence, Camilla Sims. They're both going to be here to help me answer questions and chat a little bit about the program and what you might expect if you were chosen to participate. Um, I asked Camilla to join us tonight as a representative who has experience with the early career residency program, which is just a little bit different requirements than the regular residency program. And also as someone who is an artist from New York City who had experience coming from the city to this more rural area, as someone who might be able to answer some of your questions and speak to that experience as well. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. I do want to make sure you're all aware that we're recording this session so that we can post this video up on our website for people who couldn't be with us tonight to answer hopefully their questions as well. And with that, I am going to go ahead and get started. Feel free, because we have a small group tonight, to jump in with your questions if things come up as we're going through this brief introduction to the program. So what we're here tonight is to answer your questions about eligibility, your questions about whether or not the residency is a good fit for you, and about the application process and other questions you might have about Anderson Center itself. So to begin with, I want to just let you all know where we are. That's a red flag on the map there that says Anderson Center Sculpture Garden. That's our location, and you can see where we are in relation to Minneapolis and St. Paul. And where we are in relation to the Mississippi River, that's the big river you can see running along here. And that we are in a rural area. This is Red Wing right here. The nearest towns, Lake City and Hastings, and we're a pretty good distance from what would be considered the suburbs of Minneapolis and St. Paul. So it's about a 1-hour drive from the Minneapolis and St. Paul and from the airport, and we're about 10 miles from downtown Red Wing. So we're actually even just a little bit outside of that town. I mentioned this for a couple of reasons. I think it's important for people to understand that we are not within walking distance of many city amenities like grocery stores or pharmacies. We are not in a location where it's easy to get a taxi or a car to come and pick you up to leave the center. So when you're at Anderson Center, we think everything that you need right here, but it's a little bit difficult to leave the site. So it's a great fit for people who want that, who want to have a real retreat to work on their art and be kind of away from all of those other concerns that are out there. And I also mention it so that people will understand that we are not the Anderson Ranch. Every year we get a couple of applications from people who think they're applying for residencies at the Anderson Ranch. And that is not us. We are Anderson Center at Tower View, and we are located in Minnesota, just southeast of Minneapolis and St. Paul. This is an aerial photo of our site and part of our campus. This building here is the visitor center where we have our galleries. This barn is our event space. And this building here is the historic residence where artists in residence live for the time that they're here, which is usually 2 weeks to 1 month. And there's actually a large property outside the edges of this photo with the artist studios. These studios back here are where we have workspace for visual artists in residence. And just off site here is the sculpture garden. Running along the back of the property is the Cannon Valley Bike Trail, which is a method of transportation people can use to go into town. We do have bicycles on site for residents to use to go into downtown Red Wing on the bike trail or to use the bike trail for recreational purposes. We have a lot of space for walking and enjoying outdoors while you're here. And this is a photo of the inside of the residence. When artists come to the Anderson Center, we put them in cohorts of 5 artists at a time. So if you're part of one of those cohorts, you can expect to have your own private bedroom, but that for the rest of the rooms in the house to be shared. So shared dining room, living room. There are 3 libraries in the residence. There's a kitchen that you can share with your other artists in residence to prepare meals together for your lunches, or you can prepare meals for yourself. While you're in residence, we do have a residency chef. I mentioned her earlier. She's with us here for this Q&A session. She prepares meals for the group Monday through Friday for dinner. And so there are some questions on the application about your food allergies and things like that that are to help her know what items to prepare for dinners while you're here. But the menu for that is completely up to her, and you just get to enjoy the meals that are provided. And then for your breakfasts and lunches and your meals on the weekends, we do provide groceries for you to prepare those meals yourself. And this is where I'm gonna hand it over to Camilla for a little bit to talk some about her experience as an artist in residence this past year at Anderson Center. Welcome, Camilla.
Thank you, Laurel. Hi, everybody. Hi, Shri. My name is Camilla. I am a 26-year-old composer, and I was a part of the August cohort at the Anderson Center. And my field is composition. And so I was provided the barn space, which is the event space, right, Laurel?
Yes.
I was in the barn with a grand piano, a speaker setup, and I basically just went there every day and had the whole space to myself to compose, work on existing music, an existing project, which I did end up presenting while at the Anderson Center. And I will say I had like a very positive experience, not only being from the city. I'm originally from Atlanta, but I live in New York, and it was very nice to get away from all of the hustle and bustle of the city and be in a more rural area just to focus and to not have to worry about outside distraction. Um, I utilized my time pretty well as my other cohort members, and um, got a lot done. This is definitely a residency where if you have the ability to just focus in for a month, you can really do a lot. And I know that I'm not the only one who shares those sentiments. Um, some of the most positive parts of my experience included my cohort members because um, everyone was a part of a different discipline, whether it was dancing, writing, visual arts, and we all had our own spaces, but we were all also able to come together and like work in shared spaces. Also, living in a shared house with shared common areas, we were able to eat dinner together a lot and um, talk a lot and have like daily recaps. We did events like going to $5 Tuesdays at AMC, which is always fun. And also, we did utilize the bikes. Um, there was one person, Erin, who had a car, but we tried to be sparing with asking her to share her car because you know it is a town where there's not much like around, but utilizing the bike paths, we were able to all go places and see a lot of things and then get together on weekends. As far as personal workflow, um, it's really like what you make of it in terms of discipline. Like you can wake up whenever you want, you can sleep whenever you want. There were many nights I will admit, where I went to bed at about 4 because I was working quite literally all day long. Um, and then just also being mindful of like other people around you is important. I know like coming in at 4, I had to be mindful of the floors creaking and not waking anyone up. Although it happens sometimes, but um, I think my experience was unique as a musician because just like space wise, I think I was in a really beneficial situation where I had as much room and space to make my music and be as loud as I needed to, and or just be as quiet as I needed to, being a digital composer. So that was really beneficial. And also, another part of the experience that I really appreciated was the community engagement because although Red Wing is a very small town, I think it does have a really important and robust arts community. And I guess like it's up to the resident as well to decide like how involved you want to be with the community. But there are like great community events. When I got there, I think I don't know if it was like the summer festival that was happening, um, like right at the top of August. That was great, and also going to like local shops and getting to know the other artists in the community who are either artists or like store owners or you know wherever I guess wherever people's interests are, I think there is something for everyone. And also, I guess being like 45 minutes away from Minneapolis, is it about 45 minutes?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, it's like there's so many amazing things to do in Minneapolis, but also there's like so much amazing stuff to do in Red Wing. Like we went to the Red Wing shoe factory, which was great. Um, we hung out in the town. We went to the local bookstores. We went to the local pastry shops. Like you can really have kind of like a cute small town experience that's also very like focused and very wholesome. And I think that's what we all took advantage of in my cohort. And I had a positive experience, and I'm pretty sure everyone else in my cohort had an equally positive experience. But we were all from the city, so like it was a little bit different, but you know, you get used to it after a while. I think that's all I have, unless like you have any questions, or if anyone else has any questions, like off the top of your head about certain parts of the experience.
Yeah, I will just add in that what Camilla said about it's what you make of it is a really important point. Anderson Center, as the administrators of the program, we're not gonna check up on you and make sure you're making progress on your project. We're not gonna try to direct your time. We want every artist to be the person who decides how they're going to use that time and what they're going to focus on. And we do ask for a work plan as part of your application process because we do want to know what you're planning on working on and how that might we might be a good fit for helping you complete that project or make progress on that project. But on a day-to-day basis, I'm not gonna be constantly checking in on you or asking for updates. We want artists to get out of it what they want to get out of it. And we want to provide the space and the time. So we're not a program that schedules a lot of, trips away from the residents. When you're here, you get to direct your own time. And so if you want to be a person who's always going out into the community and you want to bring your own transportation for that, that's great. We welcome that. If you're a person who wants to keep to yourself and just, work on your work and be kind of private, that's up to you. We do feel like the cohort aspect of the program is one of the defining features. So um, we can't say who would be in a cohort with you while you're here, but we hope that those relationships and getting to know one another over dinner and having conversations about the art that you're working on and other things will lead to great professional relationships and personal relationships that will last after your time at Anderson Center, and hopefully have a positive influence on your work while you're here.
I'd also like to add that Anderson Center has like amazing facilities. Like you don't really have to go too far to do anything. Like everything is there. There's like plenty of greenery. There's there's like a beautiful bike path that runs like several miles that um, also takes you directly into town both ways. Um, there's a sculpture garden. Uh, there's people near and far. There's visitors. There's your cohort, and then I mean, I think Laurel, I might have seen you like 2 or 3 times a week at most, just in passing, um, and that's because like your office was close to like my working space. But I know like Miowa, for example, who's a visual artist, he was in his studios like all the time. Rarely ever saw him unless like we were in the house together. Um, but to your point about professional relationships, it's also important to be intentional about making an effort to know those who you're in community with. Because like you never know who you could end up collaborating with or who could end up just being a great friend. Um, and also everyone who comes to the Anderson Center is working on something really unique and cool and it's worth learning about and knowing about. And I think what made my cohort experience so positive was the genuine interest and support that we all shared for each other and each other's work. And so I think like keeping that door open, even if you are a private person, can be really, really beneficial.
Yeah, thanks for that insight, Camilla. One of my favorite parts about being the coordinator of the program is getting to know all of the artists and all of their projects. And like Camilla says, everyone's working on something really amazing that is really interesting to learn more about. Camilla, we do have a question in the chat asking for if you have any advice for the application process about things folks should highlight in their application that might make them stand out.
Honestly, in my application, I was just very passionate about what I was doing, like passionate and precise about exactly what I wanted to make of my time there. I think that helps for any application, but specifically at the Anderson Center because it is only 2 weeks to a month. Having like a thorough idea of what you want to do, even if you're just like using your time for more like maybe like passive work or rest and recovery or like research or however you decide to utilize your time and what you're working on. I think having an idea of how you want to integrate with the community as far as like exhibiting your work, an interest in the community, passion for what you're doing, and also just like innovation. Even if like it doesn't matter if you think what you're working on is like not super expansive. I think anything that you're working on is expensive. And if you have like an idea of exactly what you want to do, it might help your application shine a bit more with like specificity and passion.
Great, thanks for that insight, Camilla. Camilla's going to stick with us through the rest of the session. So if you have more questions for Camilla, feel free to pop them in the chat or chime in. We're going to keep talking a little bit more about the application process and get to some of those in depth a little more on some of those things as we go along. First thing people ask a lot about is who is eligible for the program. So if you're an artist, you are eligible. The program is open to visual artists, writers, composers, choreographers, and other performing artists, scholars, and interdisciplinary artists. So if you think that your discipline falls somewhere outside of those categories, you still are eligible. We are open to all artists. We're open to artists who work in more than one um, discipline. This artist, Austin Coates, applied as both a dancer, choreographer, and a visual artist. And we were able to provide space for Austin to work on both aspects of the work that they do. And we love to see that. We feel like we are particularly well suited to interdisciplinary artists. We do seek artists who are creating original work. So if you're wanting to work on, a performance that was written or created by someone else, but that you'll be performing, that's not such a great fit for this program. Those applications tend to get weeded out pretty early in the process. Having a work plan that involves creating original work is a plus. We do want you to be over 18 years old, so that we don't have to involve anyone's legal guardians in any of the paperwork or anything going on, and so that we know everybody's ready to be on their own for a month with the cohort. If you've participated in the program before, you're still eligible as long as that wasn't in the prior year. So everyone who participated here in the residency program in 2024 is not eligible to apply in this current application cycle for the 2025 residencies, but they will become eligible again for the next cycle. So if you've come before and you would be interested in applying again, that is welcome. We do get questions about people who want to work in collaboration with other artists, as in they already have an artist partner that they collaborate with, and they'd like to come together. That is possible, but it is pretty rare. So we do require that each person in that collaboration apply separately as an individual artist, because this is a program for individual artists. And then each of those individual artists have to be selected by the panel in order for a collaboration like that to happen. So there is a place on the application where you can put some information about that if you'd like to be in a collaboration. And the early career residency program has a little bit of extra requirements. You must live in either Minnesota or New York City to be eligible for that program. And you must be in the first 10 years of your career and not currently a student to apply for that residency. Those are the requirements of the funder who funds that program. And it is a separate application process from the general residency application process because of those extra requirements. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the questions on the application. If you all have started your applications and have specific questions, you can chime in with those. Otherwise, we're going to just go through these and I'll give a little bit of advice and maybe some examples about the way these questions work. So the first thing I'll mention is that each of these questions that are underlined are a required question. Any of the questions that are not underlined are optional. So you don't have to fill those in. Answers to those questions probably won't affect the process of selecting artists, but they are information that we want to or need to know if you are selected. So first off, we ask for your preferred pronouns. This is for the jury panels. We select a panel of professionals to help us select the artists for the next residency season. I'm not a part of that panel. I just manage it, the administrative side of that. And all of the selecting and all of the scoring of the applications is up to the panelists. And we do have some meetings to discuss the applications and our final picks, and we want to be able to use your preferred pronouns when we're talking about you and your work. We feel like that is really helpful for us if you want to give us that information so we can get it right. The The second question is a required one. This is the residency period. So this is where we ask you to select your availability. So this is an important question. The early career artist application doesn't have this question because there's only one period. If you're applying for the early career residency, that's a 1-month residency. It has a specific start date and a specific end date, and that's the only period that you're coming for. So just make sure that you're available for that month of residency if you're applying for the early career artist residency. If you're applying for the other residency program, there's going to be a question there asking what your preferred time period is. And there's like a first preference, second preference. I think there's maybe even a third preference. And then there's a comment box that lets you elaborate on your selections. And this is kind of important. As our finalists are selected, we have to put together cohorts based on when artists are available. So if you say you're available for only the 1 month that you want to come and not any others, and we don't have an opening in that month, then you won't be selected. If you have flexibility about what month you can come, then there's more options for us to fit you in with a cohort. Each of our cohorts has a mix of artists from different disciplines. So, usually that means 2 visual artists, and then, right between writers and performing artists, we try to make as diverse a season as possible with having artists from different genres and things represented. And so having information about when you are available is really important for being able to put those cohorts together. The third question there that's required is to select your discipline. Thanks for this question, Chloe, about the submission deadline. So where it says noon on our website, that's in Central Time. So if you're in a different time zone, then it may say a different time in the application portal based on your time zone. The discipline question is required for us to make sure that your application is getting reviewed by someone who works in the same discipline or as close to that as we can get, who is on the panel. We want all of our artists to get their work in front of professionals in their discipline who will then know about their work, and that's important for us to help with the application process. So there's 2 questions there. One is your general discipline, and one is a more specific discipline question. This is, again, not going to affect whether or not you're selected, but it helps us during the application process to make sure that everybody's being reviewed thoroughly. This 4th question is the one I mentioned before about collaboration. If you're interested in applying with collaborators, you'll see those questions there. They're going to ask who you want to collaborate with and what your needs might be for shared spaces in those questions. Those are optional, so if you're not looking to come as a collaborator, you can just skip them. This is a past participant question. This is the one to make sure that you didn't come last year and so that you are eligible for the process this year. Number 6 is your workspace needs. This one is just to let us know what kind of a space you would want or need to work in. And this is, again, to help us in the final stage of the process to put cohorts together so that we know that we can meet your needs for what you want to work on while you're here. I'll just note at this point that we don't provide any materials for your work. We provide space, but we're not going to have any tools or paper or paint or whatever other types of things you might need for your spaces. So listing things like that isn't going to do you any good under the workspace needs question. What we want to know is, do you want a space where you can paint that you can get messy in, or do you want a piano because you're a composer? Those kinds of space needs are what we're looking for in that question. Accessibility needs is another optional question. It helps us to know if we need to make any accommodations for you, and it helps us, if you're selected, as we're putting cohorts together, to make sure that we're putting people in the right spaces and meeting everyone's needs. This community engagement question, Camilla touched on this briefly when she was talking, but all of our artists are required to do a community engagement in the Red Wing community or one of the towns that's nearby. And so there's a question there that just kind of is to gauge what sort of a group of people you might be comfortable working with. If you want to do a workshop with young kids, or if you're more comfortable with an older group, you can just give us some information there, so that if you're selected, we can work with you on some ideas about what might be a good fit for you to do for community engagement while you're here. Then this next section of questions, these are the real meat of the application. And most of these are things that you already have as a working artist that you can just upload into the application portal. So we're going to ask you for an artist statement. And we use that artist statement both in the application process to gauge your feelings and description of your own work. And we also use that with the artists that are selected to give information to our community about what artists are coming to the Anderson Center. So as you're writing your artist statement, imagine that it's a little paragraph about you that's going to go in our local paper, because that very well might happen. If there's information that you don't want to be public about your work, then probably don't put it in your artist statement. No spoilers for the novel you're working on or anything like that in your artist statement. You can put those in your work plan and your summary. And this artist statement is your like public, who I am, what I'm working on, what I want the world to know about me statement. This next plan, your work plan and your work plan summary. So you can go ahead and write your work plan in whatever program you want to and just upload it. And then there is another question that asks for a summary. And this summary can be really short. It can be one sentence. It can be whatever you feel like best summarizes what your work plan is. They're going to read the whole thing, so you don't need to restate the whole thing in the summary. You can just say, my work plan is to work on this novel or this composition. And here's the meat of it. It's just a really short, it helps our panel to differentiate between different applications. But they're going to read the whole thing in your long form version. An upload of your resume and your work samples, and there's more specific details in the application about how many work samples and what you should upload. There's a question there too for if you're uploading a piece of music and you want to write a short description or a title for that, there's a text box where you can enter that information to go along with your samples. There's a question here where if you have a website or a social media and you want to add a URL to one of those links to supplement your application materials, you may, but that's not required. Yeah, I got a good question in the chat here about should the work samples represent the proposed project or from a past project. Yeah, the your past work is kind of what we're looking for here. Um, the work that you feel like puts you in the best light and shows you off the best. So it doesn't have to be something you're working on right now. If you don't feel like that's in a progressed enough that you are ready to share it, or that you think it's ready to be displayed, you can use work from at any point in your career that you think is the best example of your work. Uh, Question 14 is for your character references. So I'm going to say a little bit about this. In the application itself, we just ask you for the email addresses for 2 character references. And this is to make it easy on our applicants. You don't have to collect a lot of information or things like that, but these are character references that we're asking for, not professional references. Um, we feel like your resume and your work samples are going to tell us what we need to know about you professionally. And these character references are to tell us whether or not you're going to be a good fit to live in a house with 4 other people. And they're going to ask questions about how you get along with others, if you're a person that others would want to share space and time with. So your references don't have to be someone you've worked for. They can be a friend. They can be anyone you want who you feel can speak to who you are as a person and in relationships to others. We do ask that you notify them before you use them that they're going to get an email that asks them some questions. If you do want to use a professional reference, there's a place in there where they can write their recommendation of you and add that stuff too. But what we're really looking for is to know if you're gonna be happy here while you're here for the month. Because we want everyone to have the best experience that we can provide. And then the last questions are health and safety questions. These are optional, but these are the things like, do you have food allergies? How do you feel about sharing a bathroom with other people in the residency house? And these questions, they are optional. They're not going to affect whether or not you're selected as an artist, but they are going to help us put together those cohorts of um, people. Because, like I said, we want to try to make sure everyone has the best experience that they can. Uh, if you have a lot of food allergies, we don't want to put you in the same cohort as a group with some where others are going to be having conflicting needs. So that's the purpose of those questions. They are optional, but it really is important to us that you answer them. And if you don't answer them and you are selected, that you give us that information afterwards so that we can make sure that everything is going to meet your needs.
I will just chime in there regarding food allergies and stuff. I generally, once the group is selected, I do confirm like twice anyway too. So eventually that information will end up being important and, you know, acquired.
Yes, if you're selected, it will be required eventually. If you're trying to get your application in under the deadline and you're trying to skip the optional questions, it's not going to, take you out of the running, but we are going to need that information at some point. So a little bit about the application process. Like I mentioned before, we select a panel of artists and arts professionals to review the applications for the season. There are 2 separate panels, one for the early career residency and one for the other residency program. And there's a process that we go through to make sure that everyone's application is thoroughly reviewed. And so the timeline of what you can expect from the process is that the applications are currently open on our submittable application portal. We don't accept applications outside of the submittable portal. If you email me your resume, that doesn't count. You have to actually go to submittable and fill out the application. The applications close in early January, and the date varies from year to year, but it's always in early January, and we try to close them at noon on a Tuesday. And that's, like I said before, Central Time, so it might be different in your time zone. But that's so that we have the morning of that day, and we have one business day before that for people to ask their last minute questions. And then as soon as the application portal closes, we're gonna send those applications to the panel to start reviewing them. And we get a lot of applications, several hundred applications each year. So it does take some time for our panelists to give each of those a thorough review. So we provide a status update in early February, pretty much a month after the submission deadline, to know, so that you'll know if your application was selected to move into the second round of the panel selection process. Or we may send you a notification saying that this year your application didn't make it into the second round. That doesn't mean that it wasn't a great application. There are a whole lot of factors that go into that first round of selection process, and so some artists make it all the way to the finalist round one year and are eliminated in the first round in a different year. It really depends a lot on who the other applicants are, who the other panelists are. There's just so many factors. So we try to let everybody know as soon as we can if they're moving on to the next round of selection. In late February, after we've done the bulk of the second round of reviews, finalists might be called for a phone interview, and people who you listed as references might get a phone call, or we might contact them to ask follow-up questions to give everybody the really thorough review that we feel like they need before we select the final cohorts of who's in what group. And then in early March, we make the notifications. So if you've been selected for a residency, we'll let you know that. And we're also going to let artists know if they've been placed on the waiting list and if they've been eliminated from consideration at that stage of the process. I want to say a little bit about the waiting list. The waiting list is a really important part of the process. We do have artists who drop out sometimes right when we notify them to let them know they've been selected. Some of them will say, oh, my situation has changed and no thank you. And in that case, we're going to move right to our waiting list to select another artist to take that spot. And sometimes we find out, a little bit later on that something has changed and they can no longer attend. Sometimes we find out, on pretty short notice if it's due to a medical issue or something like that. So if you're notified that you're on the waiting list, it could be that you'll get a spot. And so you'll want to let us know that that you don't want to be on the waiting list if at that point you don't want to hold the time to be able to come. But there's no guarantees. Sometimes the spots don't open up and an artist will just be on the waiting list for that year and not get the chance to come and be part of that season. So we have on our website, there is a page with a list of frequently asked questions. I'm going to go through them here so we can chat a little bit more about them if you need some more in-depth answers to any of these, but these are listed and there are responses listed on our website, so you can go and look them up quickly or share those with others if you want to. So first one is about technical difficulties. We use the Submittable platform for our application process. So if you're having technical problems with that website, I'm not going to be able to help you fix those. You're going to need to contact Submittable's customer support. If you go to that list of frequently asked questions on our website, you'll find the link and the information to contact Submittable's customer support for technical issues. People often ask if they can still apply after the submission deadline, and the answer to that is no. The submission deadline is set up to close at noon on that day, and the technology doesn't care if your clock says you had 5 more minutes. It doesn't care if you're in a different time zone. It is set to close at the time it's set to close, and I'm not able to reopen it after that time. So I really want to urge everyone not to wait until the last day to submit their applications. We have had people say that they had a power outage and so they were unable to submit it, or had other sorts of, unforeseen circumstances. And I feel badly about that and I sympathize, but there just isn't any way for me to reopen the submissions after that deadline is passed. So please, please, please submit it the week before.
Hey, Laurel, sorry to interrupt. It looks like there is a couple of questions here in the chat regarding early career residencies.
Yep, I'm going to get to those in just a second.
Okay, sounds good. Sorry.
Yep, no, thanks for keeping an eye on that.
Of course.
This question 3, I want to apply to both the general residency and the early career residency. Can my application be for both? So you can apply to both programs. If you're an early career artist, you're also eligible for the other residency program. But as I said before, they have 2 separate panels and 2 separate sets of requirements. So we do require that you fill out and submit both applications separately. So if you apply to the early career program, we're not going to automatically consider you for the other one. You're going to have to submit a separate application for the other one. But you can apply for both and you can be considered for both. And we have had artists who applied who were early career artists be selected in the general residency program. This one we pretty much already covered about working in collaboration with other artists. Are there scholarships available? So we get this question quite a bit. The Anderson Center does not cover the costs of your travel to the Anderson Center for the general residency program, or costs for your supplies for your work. We don't have any extra funding available for those things. So while you're here, we're going to cover your room and board and your workspace. And the rest of it is up to you. If there are other resources out there where you can seek funding to cover those things, then by all means, we encourage that. But we're not going to be able to provide any additional scholarships for people to be able to come. Will the Anderson Center help me get a visa? We will provide a letter of invitation if you're selected to participate that you can use to apply for a visa to travel to the Anderson Center. I have a commitment to work around. Can the schedule be flexible? So that's a no for the most part. If you have a professional commitment in the middle of your residency that you can accommodate, by participating remotely, then that's part of your work time and I'm not gonna interfere with that. If you want to leave the residency, we really discourage that. We want to offer the opportunity to folks who can be here and get the most out of their time for the entire month that they are here. So if you know that you're going to need to be somewhere else for a family commitment or something else in the middle of a month, then don't put that as a month that you're available to come. Sometimes when we make the calls to tell artists they're selected, they ask if they can come in a different month than the month that they've been offered. And the answer to that question is no. What we can do is put you on the waiting list for that other month. So if you're a finalist who's been selected as an artist to come in a particular month, please know that thought goes into selecting who are part of those cohorts. And we do it based on what you said your availability was. So like if you said in your application that you couldn't come in August, we're not going to schedule you for August. We're going to try to find an artist who's available in August for that month. But because we are assigning cohorts to specific months, we can't just swap it around after we've already started notifying artists. What we can do is put you on the waiting list for your preferred month, and we can notify you if an opening opens up in that month. That's it. So if you really need to change to a different month than the one you've been selected for, you have at that point the chance to decline or to be put on the waiting list for a different month. And then we would offer that spot to the next artist on the waiting list for the month that you've declined. Are there kilns and facilities for ceramics? Not on site at Anderson Center that are part of our program. We do have in downtown Red Wing, a clay and creative center, and they have kilns and spaces for the community to work on ceramics projects, and they have wheels for throwing and things like that. And so there is, if you have transportation, the potential that you could take your work there to be fired and make some kind of arrangement with them to use their facilities. But we do not have those facilities at Anderson Center. We do have a dark room and a printmaking facility with a letterpress and etching press and a few other things that are described more fully on our website. So ask me if you have a need for specific types of facilities that we might have, but that's one that I'm afraid we don't at this time. Is there Wi-Fi? Yes, we have Wi-Fi in the residence and in all of the workspaces here at Anderson Center. So if you're working on a project that requires internet access, if you're using editing software on your computer, if you have a lot of electronics needs, we should be able to accommodate those. If you have need for like a really specific fast speed or something like that, then contact us to find out. But what we have already here on site is going to be adequate for almost everyone's needs. My friend or family member would like to visit while I'm a resident, can they stay with me? And the answer to that is also no, because of the nature of the program being cohorts of other artists. We don't allow artists to bring other people into the residence for the privacy of the other artists. It just becomes, we don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. We don't want to put anyone in a position where they feel pressured to say that they're okay with it if they're not really okay with it. So our policy on that is that we do not allow outside guests inside the residence. And that's not the kind of experience that we're providing in this residency. There are other residency programs out there that have more, accommodations for a single artist where it's an apartment or things like that, where that might be more of a thing that could happen, but that's not the way that our program is structured. So if you do want to have someone come to visit you, they can stay off-site somewhere in a hotel or in another accommodations, and they can visit our site in all of the public spaces and spend time with you in your studio, but they cannot stay in the residence. And then this question we get a lot is, can we provide any feedback on your applications? And I'm afraid that we just can't because we have these panels that do the selection process. And because of the large volume of applications, we don't really have the capacity to be able to provide individual notes or feedback on individual applications. What I can say about that is that I mentioned before, sometimes you can make it to the finalist stage one year and only make it to through round one in a different year. And it really varies depending on all of the different applicants that we get and the different panelists that we have and what caught their eye. So please know that it is a really competitive program. And so we just, we see so many really amazing applications, and some of them don't become finalists, but that doesn't mean really anything. We are really fortunate to have so much interest from such amazing artists that want to come here to work on their work. And so that's all I have prepared to go through with you all. And I hope that that answered some of your questions. If you have more questions for me or for Camilla, you can ask them. And here's where I'm going to talk a little bit about the early career category and whether or not people are eligible. Because we do get this question a lot too. The basic requirements that are listed in the application are that you be a resident of either Minnesota or New York City. And if you're not, I'm going to throw your application out before it gets sent to the panel. There's a requirement that you not be currently a student. And if I can tell from your application that you are a student, I'm also going to throw your application out before that gets sent to the panel. The main one that is a little bit more of a gray area is whether or not someone is early career, which they define as being within the first 10 years of your career, who hasn't been, you know, received a lot of attention and awards that would make you seem like you weren't really early career, that you were already established in your career. It's a gray area. It's something that I can't really say for certain. It's kind of a judgment call for the artists who are applying. If you know that you've been around longer than 10 years, then probably you want to just apply to the general residency program. If you feel like it could go either way, like you might be on the edge of that, I would encourage you to apply to the early career and just like make your case in your work plan and your resume that you're still an early career artist. And why this particular residency would really be a boost to your career and help you become an established career artist. I can just say that when it comes down to the finalists, if your application has made it that far and we're selecting the final cohort for that program, if the panel is trying to select between you and another artist, and that artist is a more clear fit for the early career category, they're probably going to have a leg up on you. The panel might choose to select based on that clarity. So If it's not that kind of a situation, then it won't, making that argument won't matter as much. But I feel like it would just help in the process if you think you're an early career artist to just make that case. Right, I think that's all the questions
Um,
from the chat.
uh, I have a question.
Yeah.
And I actually am I want to put the question just now in the chat about the early career
Mhm.
categorization. I appreciate you going into that. It is a bit still, I guess I was hoping for a few more details. Um, and I'm just thinking, in terms of the panel when they're reviewing these applications, if you have any insight into any criteria that they look for. I mean, since this is an option and it's a very generous option, this residency, um, in my mind, I'm just thinking there's got to be some distinct criteria of some sort. I can think of myself as an early career artist, but if I getting nitpicky about things, does that entail, publishing, or you published in such and such places, 10 years ago for etc. There's a lot of, like you said, there's gray area.
Mhm.
Um, but if you are aware of any criteria that the panel goes by or anything like that, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, unfortunately, there aren't any really specific measurements like that. The panelists are their, selection process is about first looking at the quality of the work to see if, compared to the other artists, to who should advance into the final rounds, and to look at people's work plans and what they feel that they would get out of coming for the residency. And that's a place where you can make a really good case for being an early career artist and how it would help you advance your work to come for that program. But unfortunately, there just isn't any, you can have accomplished this, but you can't have accomplished that and still be considered an early career artist. It really is just kind of, yeah, up to you whether or not you think you still are. And we have had some people apply who probably were just right at the end of that, early career within the first 10 years of your career period. Like they might have been in year 10. And so they're like just on the bubble of being eligible and have applied and succeeded. So if you want to apply to both programs, and you can use the exact same materials for both if you want to, I would just encourage you to apply for both.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's good advice.
All right, well, here this slide has my contact information. So if you do think of more questions as you're going through your applications and you want to come back and ask them later, you can contact me at my email address or my phone number here. And you can find a lot of that information. You can revisit it on our website, and we're going to post this video probably at some point as well so that you can come back to these. Um, yeah, this is a good question. If you apply to both, would we be selected for both? This is a situation that I haven't seen happen, but if you were selected for both, I would contact you and find out your preference. And most likely you would want to choose the early career residency if you were selected for both. But yeah, the panels meet separately and they don't know who has been selected for the other program. So it is possible that you could be selected for both. And then at that point, I would be the only person who would know that you were selected for both. And I would reach out to you to talk to you about it and figure out what we would want to do about that.
I'm so sorry, Laurel.
Yeah.
Something just now occurred to me. So if applying, I live in New York.
Mhm.
Um, would I be able to apply to both, or is that full residency just for Minnesota residents?
The general residency program is for any artists all over the world. So you're if you live in New York City, you're definitely eligible for both.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just the early career residency that is limited in geography. And that's because of the funder who provides the grant funding for that program. And those are the areas that they work in. All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming and asking your questions. Thank you so much to Camilla Sims for adding her perspective to this, and to Shri for being here to talk a little bit about the food requirements that folks might have. Uh, like I said, we're going to post this on our website, and you've got my contact information, so feel free to reach out if you have additional questions. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and end this now unless anybody has any final questions. All right, have a great night, everybody.